Well, hello and good evening. Welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I will be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night we talked about worlds within our world and how you and I were taught and programmed to believe that the way that we're living right now is the only possible way that we can live. No other way of life, no other options are open to us. This is it. We have to be controlled. We have to live under the thumb of monsters and, I use the word despot. I haven't used that word before online. Monsters, basically, our masters. And they're, and again, another word I haven't used too often except in relation to the horrible place known as New Zealand, the word gibbering. And I use that word along with words like madness, fear, terror, rage, because our masters are truly cowards, and all cowards, when confronted, tend to gibber in tremendous frustration and tremendous rage. And when I look around at all the anger and the frustration and the rage and the fear I see in the Western world, I know that can't be true. I know there's got to be a better way of living. And I've seen so many terrible things in my life. I grew up with truly terrible people. They were nothing. They were nobodies. They were street thugs. They were barely gangbangers. I mean, they were thugs, mindless thugs, but they served our masters. And I saw firsthand the hatred in them, the fear in them, and the joy they had in hurting other people. It was such fun because they just loved to hurt people. The innocent, the helpless, the hopeless, the defenseless. Those were their targets, as it is today with our masters. And it was always 10 to 1, 12 to 1, 20 to 1. God forbid one of these sycophants, one of these street thug bullies would have a one-on-one encounter with one of their victims. Literally, all the victim would have to say is boo, and this really seemingly street thug bully monster would wet himself in fear. This actually happened to me once. I was in a place called Costa Mesa, California. I think I was maybe 16 years old. And there was this trio of street thugs, not related to the ones that I knew. These were just common street trash that I went to high school with. And they would harass us constantly in the halls of the high school. Of course, nobody knew or cared because we were nerds. And their leader was a little tiny guy, really tough guy, because he had his thugs with him. And I remember one day I was walking through the streets of Costa Mesa in the residential district around 17th Street, and I saw him. And it was just him. It was just me. And I didn't even think about it. I saw him, and I immediately made a run for him because I was going to beat the crap out of him. And this tough guy, this, really big man, he looked at me, and he just went white. And he turned, and he was running for his life because he knew if I caught up with him, I was going to kill him. And I was this little nerdy guy. Wouldn't hurt a fly. But something inside me snapped, and he saw it, and he ran. And I saw it again many, many years later out in the desert where I was working, again, as a member of the family. These two U.S. Army Air Corps, Army Intelligence street thugs. They were in their 70s or 80s by then. And they were no longer useful to their masters, so they were still trying to be big men. And this one of the brothers enjoyed tormenting me. He had tormented me for years. And one day, he went too far. And I just stood there and looked at him. And he looked at me, and he just went white because he had pushed me too far. One more, I was going to kill him. He was going to die, and he knew it. And he ran for his room, locked the door, and stayed in there for days, terrified of me. I was their housekeeper at the time. I was basically the house slave. And he immediately got on the phone to all of his relatives, telling them that he was in fear of his life, he was terrified of me, and all of a sudden all of his relatives, all of these old women, called me and said, "Oh, you wouldn't hurt him, would you?" And finally his niece called me. And it was quite an amazing conversation. I finally asked the question that I'd been wanting to ask for the years that I'd known these people. And I asked his niece, I said, "You do know that your uncle, this wonderful man, he rapes little children. You know that, don't you?" And this woman, his niece, without batting an eye, without missing a beat, she actually said to me, "Oh, you wouldn't hurt him because of that, would you?" And that's, again, one of those moments in time where you just don't know what to say. Because every question I'd ever had about these people was answered in that moment. I literally, it was like a moment out of a television show. I actually just stared at the phone, the receiver in my hand. I couldn't say anything. I just put the phone down. Because in that moment, that told me everything I ever wanted to know about these people. And of course, not that long after, the other brother died, and I was robbed of $500,000 of my share of the real estate project because the old man, the uncle, and his niece changed all the paperwork, forged a lot of signatures, and all of a sudden my $500,000 worth of equity in this real estate company vanished. So they got even with me. And yet the whole time they were doing it, I knew they were doing it, and I kept saying to myself, they won't do it. They'll realize what they're doing is wrong, and they'll stop. No, they never did. So anyway, I grew up as a whipped dog, and so I know firsthand what our masters want us to be. And how all around of us, other human beings living their lives, free of our masters in these other worlds that they've created for themselves, under the earth, up in the sky, up in the mountains, wherever they are, there are other races of human beings on this planet with us who are not part of Western culture at all. They're free, and they're doing very well. So I know for a fact that the way that you and I are living isn't the only way. And so tonight, I thought we might chat about Doomsday is up to you. And how it really, truly is up to you as to how you live your life and how our world will proceed from here on. I mean, after 40 years, I can honestly tell you, in my experience with the human condition, with our human race, I don't see any hope at all. I really don't. I don't see any hope of the human race standing up as one people, one family, and just saying no to our masters. I just don't see 7 billion people standing together, holding hands, facing down a few thousand masters and their senior slaves, the mandarins, and their literally bootlicking slaves, the ones I grew up with. And 7 billion people saying to these less than a handful, we don't need you. And then turning our backs on them. And without us, they're powerless. And they're so scared of us. They're terrified of us. And yet we let them do anything they want. And so I'm raising money to build a village. And for those painfully few of us that will survive, to live that other life outside and beyond Western culture, beyond the rule and control of our masters. We probably won't even miss you because we'll be too busy trying to remember what it is to be human beings. And the sad thing is it takes so little to say no. No, you will not hurt me. No, you will not lie to me. No, you will not steal from me. No, you will not harm our world ever again. That's all it takes. The word no. And the memory that we are men and that we are women and that we are human beings. That you and I are citizens of a very ancient world. I mean, our world, our earth is so old, so ancient, that there are people who actually believe that the other human races that live in our galaxy, and there are a few, They believe that those human races that live in the galaxy today actually started here. I mean, that sort of gives you some kind of pride if you think about it. And again, it doesn't matter if you believe in God. It doesn't matter if you believe in Satan. Our masters do. Good for them. It also doesn't matter if you believe in little green men or Nordic blondes or alien life. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's a fact that the human race has lived on this planet for billions of years, and in the exact same form that we are today. That's a fact. You can look that up on the web. You look for keyword search, out-of-place artifacts, and you'll see examples of the human race in the form that we exist today are found all over this world, and they're billions of years old. I mean, that should give us at least some pride that we should all share. You know, but these stories that keep coming up, alien visitors, descendants of human beings who, knowing that the Earth was, once again, going to flip end for end, as it does every 32,000 years like clockwork, and apparently has since, time began. These races of people, these Earth people, decided to flee the destruction, and they went out into the stars. And the more research I do, the more I study, the more easy it seems that we can just leave the planet. And strangely enough, in ships that happen to look like flying saucers. I mean, if you go online, and again, do a keyword search for flying saucer technology, you will find that there are patents actually filed with the U.S. Patent Office on how to build your own flying saucer. There are blueprints online for power supplies, drive systems, gravity control, atmospheric control, everything that you would need to build your own flying saucer. I've looked this up. It's amazing. And the funny thing is, you can build your own flying saucer, and it won't cost that much money. It's incredible. So again, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that every 32,000 years, if you're paying attention, and you see the planet about to flip because a dead brown dwarf star, a companion of our live and living and breathing yellow star, is quite naturally passing through the plane of our solar system, is going to flip the Earth like a billiard ball. It's going to heat up the solar system so the poles of the Earth get hot. Well, guess what? The poles on Mars are getting hot. Venus is getting hot. But around the equator, ice age. Has something to do with the flow of electricity. Don't ask me, I don't know. All I know is the universe is electrical in nature. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that this technology, passed down cycle after cycle, civilization after civilization, has been hoarded. We know the Vatican has huge caverns filled with this ancient knowledge that they've scoured from all over the world, destroyed, so we don't have it, but they have the originals. It's amazing. The information's there and it's totally ignored. All that information's on the internet. You don't even have to leave your house. You don't even have to stand up. You can sit at the computer and you can find how to build your own flying saucer. And you know what? If even just 1% of these gizmos you find online work, we could change the face of the world today without firing a shot. And all it takes is the decision, your decision, to live a different life. And Doomsday? It all begins with the word no. It is, of course, the single hardest word I ever learned to say, the word no. And again, it's one of those events in your existence that changes your life forever. So really, Doomsday is up to you and only you. If only you know it. And if only you realize it, and if only you do something about it. There is an old phrase that just got me into trouble over and over and over back in the States whenever I used it in a business meeting. I would say to investors or corporate partners, hey, guys, working together, we can achieve anything. Together. And unfortunately, in Western culture, that marks you as a rube, as a fool, as a dolt, as a simpleton, and someone who should just be used and thrown away. Sadly, I don't fall into any of those categories, and after a few months, these crooks and liars and thieves, after trying to bully me out of my technologies, discovered that instead of finding a pushover, they found a brick wall. And having backed themselves into a corner because now they've revealed to me what they truly are, no business was possible. But I keep saying those words, I don't know why. Working together, we can achieve anything together. I think I say those words because someday, maybe, somebody besides me might actually believe them. I know my business partner, the producer of the show, Mr. Kenneth Slinker, believes that. But that makes 2 out of 7 billion. I frankly just don't like those odds. So the way to stop Doomsday is for you to stand up, turn your back on the system, and just stop using it. Don't pay your federal taxes. Don't pay any taxes at all. That money is just robbed. It does you no good. Stop voting in national elections. Vote in your local elections. Better yet, run for local office. Don't pay your credit card charges. Actually, under U.S. law, the very concept of the credit card is against the law. You can actually look that up. The concept of the credit card actually violates U.S. law. So you don't even have to pay them. Don't pay it. Don't let your bank rob you. When you're robbed by your bank, robbed by your government, robbed by your attorney, robbed by the meter maid, go find a few hundred of your closest personal friends, all of you who have guns, walk down and demand your money back. So you can't win playing their game, the system. If you can't win a game because it's rigged, don't play it. Do you want to change your world? Do you want to change your world for the better? Start in your hometown. Run for office. Take care of your local world. Shop local, support local. Under the laws of the United States, the U.S. federal government, based in Washington, D.C., has no power under the Constitution to tell any state of the Union how to behave, how to run their internal affairs. Does not have the power to go to war. You see, under the Articles of Confederation, in, I believe, 1863 or something, every state of the Union is a sovereign nation unto themselves, which means that the state of California is actually the nation of California. The state of Nevada is actually the nation of Nevada. And the only reason these individual countries came together to form a union was for commerce. The only power that the U.S. federal government in Washington, D.C., which is, by the way, a privately owned offshore corporation, the only power they have under the Constitution is to control commerce, or at least negotiate commerce between these 51 individual nations, these sovereign nations that came together of their own free will to be one nation under God. But each state, each nation is still independent. You might try reading the Constitution every once in a while. It'll get you. So the next time the federal government tells you what to do, ignore them. Stop paying your federal taxes. These are the taxes that they rob from you. IRS collects it, I think, $500 million an hour. IRS takes that $500 million an hour in taxes that they steal from you. They turn it over to the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, both the IRS and the Federal Reserve Bank are both privately owned offshore corporations. The IRS is a privately owned offshore corporation based out of Puerto Rico. The Federal Reserve Bank, which is not part of the U.S. government, is based somewhere in Europe. Here's what happens when you pay your tax money at $500 million an hour. The IRS steals it from you under fake laws that don't have any validity. They turn that money over to the Federal Reserve Bank, a privately owned offshore corporation. The Federal Reserve Bank sends that money to Europe, and you never see it again. So how does the United States, the 51 sovereign nations, operate? Excise taxes. When you buy a pack of cigarettes, they tax you for it. When you buy some gasoline, you're going to drive on their roads, they tax you for it. When you buy alcohol, they tax you for it. That and credit. And that's how your government runs. Your taxes are stolen. President Ronald Reagan, back when he was in office, actually had a guy named Grace do a study as where do our tax dollars go. It's like a 600-page report. And the Grace report stated at the end that not one nickel, a nickel is 5 cents for those of us who are foreigners, not 5 cents of the money collected by the IRS can be found. It goes offshore and is never seen again. This was a written government report under Ronald Reagan. So stop paying your taxes. You're just being robbed. It's like the mafia coming in and shaking down your neighborhood. Say no when Washington, D.C. issues orders to you or to your state. Just say no. Just don't pay your federal taxes. Without federal taxes, they're powerless. Take a walk to your state capitol. Walk into the state senate. Sorry, I'm whispering again. Go in with a couple thousand of your closest personal friends, all of whom have guns. Make certain that your guns are visible at all times. You have the right as a U.S. citizen to bear arms in defense against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you don't want anyone to accuse you of carrying a concealed weapon. That would get you in trouble. You're a terrorist. Of course, if you jaywalk in the United States, you're a terrorist, but that's something else. You walk into the state senate, perfectly legal, with your firearm, perfectly exposed, perfectly legal, and you do a perfectly legal citizen's arrest of every criminal that you find in the state senate. And you might want to stop by and pick up the governor, too. Put these criminals on trial. Seize their assets. And, then there are those of you who went to Wall Street with several million of your closest personal friends, also all of whom had guns in plain sight, arrested the bankers, put them in prison, try to be very polite. What you want to do is you want to arrest these people and then take back the money that they stole from you. Stole from me, stole from everybody. You see, without bankers controlling the federal government, without the corporations controlling the state governments, I guess we'll have to do something different. Well, I don't know, like electing people who are held accountable by and are accountable to the people of the United States of America, and not to the bankers and not to the corporations. And then you might start looking over the bank statements of your local city, county, and state governments. You will find trillions and trillions of dollars. Again, all of this is your money. Is in their bank accounts. Now, if this is puzzling to you, and I know how you feel, look up something on the web, again, keyword search, cumulative annual financial reports, CAFR for short. There's a gentleman that we've chatted about before by the name of Walter Burien. Go to his website. I think Burien is B-U-R-I-E-N. So look up Walter Burien CAFR, Cumulative Annual Financial Reports. He will explain it to you beautifully. Basically, we've all been robbed, again, by the servants of our republic. The United States today is so awash with money. There's money everywhere. The criminals don't know what to do with all this money. You and I, of course, are on borderline starvation and wondering how we're going to pay the rent tomorrow. But there's so much money in our country that the bankers, the corporations, the criminals, the politicians don't know what to do with it all. And, please don't forget to go and visit all those former politicians, all those congressmen and senators and governors and former presidents who have sold us out in the last 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, year after year. Please don't forget them. Please be polite and courteous and go visit them as well. Please explain to them, as you and several million of your closest friends are arresting them, be as polite and courteous as you can. Please explain to them that you are arresting them for crimes against humanity, crimes against mankind. And if they don't understand what that means, and frankly they won't, just tell them that you are arresting them for treason, high treason, and that all of their assets are being confiscated and returned to the peoples of the world from whom they were stolen. And then form constitutionally based courts, not the courts we have today, which are, commercial courts. Our courts in the United States today are commercial courts. The United States declared bankruptcy in the 1930s. And we declared bankruptcy to British banks. And ever since then, the U.S. military has been in charge of our court system, and they have been enforcing commercial law in our courts, not constitutional law. So you need to reform constitutional courts, courts that follow the rule of law under the U.S. Constitution and do not follow the gibbering madness and hatred of dictators and monsters. And then Doomsday. Well, you know, at that point, all you have to worry about is the planet flipping end for end and the new ice age that started a few years ago. After all of our masters are in prison, and their Mandarin servants are in prison, and all of their secret agencies have been revealed, and all of those crazies in prison, a little thing like the planet flipping and ice covering the Earth, well, you know, at that point, that sounds like a nice quiet holiday to me. At this point, I'm looking forward to that. For all of us here at the2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk, wishing you a really good day and reminding you, please, keep that one good thought. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel fighting his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race, their black magic, captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.